send any questions, you can use the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to answer questions as we go along. Just as a reminder, as always, our session will be recorded today, and we'll have that posted for you within a day or two if anybody has missed today's session. With that, I'm going to ask that we say our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. BOMA Nevada's mission statement. BOMA Nevada's mission is our organization is to promote the professional growth and success of its members and their customers in the commercial real estate industry by creating and fostering an environment of excellence through partnership, advocacy, and education. I would like to thank our annual platinum sponsor, Cox Business, for sponsoring today's luncheon, and our annual website sponsor, Community Vision. Thank you both for continued support of BOMA Nevada. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Owen for some committee announcements. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Appreciate that. Good to be with you all. First off, committees continue to look for ways to stay engaged with principals and other members. They all would greatly appreciate your help, so please reach out. Next is the Toby Awards. The Toby Committee would like to remind you of the 2021 Toby Awards Gala that is scheduled for Saturday, February 20th, 2021 at the JW Marriott. Chris McGarry from Berkshire Hathaway, Nevada, and the McGarry Group will be honored at the event with a 2020 Leadership Award, and the theme will be Better Together. The Toby Committee is continuing to accept entries, and those entry fees are waived for this year. The next update is from the Education Committee. They want you to know about our final BOMI class of 2020. It's called Ethics is Good Business on November the 6th from 8 a.m. to 5. This provides you with the tools to make sound ethical decisions. Courses are offered both in person at 3800 Howard Hughes Parkway or virtually as necessary. Price is $700 for BOMA Nevada members or $800 for non-members. For more information, visit bomanevada.org. Next up is the Membership Committee. They have a special membership offer for new property managers. So please call the office today and learn more at 702-938-2662. And finally, for my updates, is the Legislative Committee. They're the ones bringing you this legislative update. So now I'd like to turn it over to Dave Ray from Green Vision, who will be moderating today's legislative update. And as a quick reminder, everyone can submit questions in the Q&A box to be answered at the end of the presentation. All right, Dave, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Definitely excited to be involved with this process again. We've at BOMA have had these types of interactions, education sessions for quite some time now. And the reason that we continue to do this is to provide value to the membership, to provide information to the membership, to make sure that the membership is aware of everything that needs to happen, and most importantly, to try to maintain those relationships. So typically on an annual basis, every other year, BOMA will travel to Washington, D.C. to work with the federal representatives. And to be honest with you, some of the most enjoyable experiences we have are visiting with the local representatives, just because they're so accessible, they're so easy to work with, and they genuinely care and they listen. So we're really excited to present this program today. First question I had for everybody involved, did you guys receive the lunch that BOMA sent? I didn't get mine yet. I'm expecting it any minute, but I thought that was part of the deal. I don't know if you guys all have your lunch yet. So keep an eye out for that. If the doorbell rings, definitely answer it. As far as the two panelists we have today, what I'd like to do is just go ahead and introduce them first, and then we're gonna go ahead and have them give us an update on the two special sessions that they just recently completed. And then after that, we're gonna ask them what can they expect or what can then we expect as an organization and as citizens at the next session coming up in February, and how can we get involved? So the first person I would like to do is introduce Senator Yvanna Cancela. She is representing District 10. Just fun fact, she is the first Latino representative up in Carson City. So we're excited that, that she is taking representation of the community for the 10th district. One of the things that when we talked to Yvanna about Nevada, that she was really excited to share is she goes that she loves Nevada because it's a place where with hard work and with big dreams, anything is possible. And, you know, that definitely rings true. You know, when you look at the fact that we've got such a great community, such a big, wonderful city, and it's all here in the middle of the desert where maybe if we didn't have that train stop years and years ago, none of us would be here at this point in time. The second panelist is Assemblyman Tom Roberts. And Tom is has participated on our panel for a couple years now. And it's great to have his representation up in the state. He's representing District 13 in the Assembly. Tom's got a background in law enforcement. He stays involved. He actually gave us kind of an update on what was happening on the Strip currently. So it's always nice to have that additional information. As with Yvanna, Tom loves the outdoors. He goes mountain biking, hiking, all of those types of things. So it seems like that's one of the things that everybody that I've talked to on every panel, they all enjoy the outdoors in Nevada. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and get started and introduce Senator Cancela. If you could go ahead and let us know in your perspective how the special sessions went, paying particular attention to maybe some issues that building owners and managers would be interested in, and let us know kind of what you feel that was accomplished, what could have been accomplished. And if you could take maybe the next 10, 15 minutes to kind of let us know, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Dave, and to everyone at BOMA for taking the time today to talk not only about the previous special sessions, but about where things are at, not just politically, but as we head into the 2021 session. It is so important to have different perspectives and different voices. I'd like to start a bit by talking about the structure of the Nevada legislature and just filling in who we are and what we do and how we do it so that we're all operating off the same information, because special sessions are different than how we regularly do our work, and then talk about what happened in each special session this summer and what consequences will come as a result of decisions that we made as legislative bodies. Nevada is one of a handful of states that meets every other year as a legislature instead of every other year or full-time. Our neighbor, California, for example, has a full-time legislature where legislators are legislating year-round. Here, we meet every other year for 120 days, and we are a true citizen legislature because legislators are paid only when in session. And so all legislators have some other life outside of their legislative life, whether they're retired, currently working, running their own businesses as teachers. There are a laundry list of jobs that our legislators hold. And that's important because we bring those perspectives with us to the legislature. We are experts in what we do as our day jobs and perhaps what our spouses or close family and friends do as their work, but we really make decisions on issues that we may be learning about for the first time. And that's how our state constitution was designed, and that's how our state's constitutional drafters intended for the legislature to operate, a true representation of the people of our state. We are also one of only 2 legislatures in the country that has a citizen legislature with term limits. So for me in the state Senate, I'll serve 3 terms if I am fortunate enough to be elected. It's a 12-year limit. And in the Assembly, it's 6 terms, or because the terms are 2 years. So those are the parameters under which we make decisions. There is an opportunity either upon the call of the governor or because legislators call themselves into a special session. And those happen when there is pressing business for the state. And similar to previous special sessions, this special session, the two special sessions that took place this summer, happened as a result of dramatic changes in the budget. Because we meet every other year for 120 days, and because one of the most important jobs of the legislature is determining the budget for the state, we set a biannual budget. So when there is a change in our income, in our tax revenue base, we as a body have to make decisions about how to reallocate funds in order to have a balanced budget. We are constitutionally mandated to have a balanced budget. So this summer, after what were really hard days for our entire state when the pandemic began and we had to shut down our casinos across the state, our state budget took a hit. No different than the way that families across Nevada's budgets took a hit. It was and will continue to be a tough time for our state. The governor called us into special session number 1 to address those budget shortfalls. As an interim committee, the interim finance committee made changes to the state's budget to make sure that we could close out budget year 2020 before the July 1st ending of the fiscal year. We then, as a legislature, went into special session to make changes to the budget so we could have a balanced budget for the year 2021. Between the changes made in interim finance and the changes made in the special session, we cut $1.2 billion with a B dollars from our state's operating dollars. That is a tremendous hit. It is a tremendous hit across the board, across agencies. All agencies were forced to represent their budget with a 14% reduction. Many agencies were able to capture savings in vacancies, and then agencies had to make tough decisions about potential layoffs, about where to cut programming. And one thing I'm really proud of is that despite what were really tough decisions, we were able to keep whole the distributive school account so that we did not cut per pupil spending. The biggest buckets of cash that our state dollars go into are Medicaid and education. And as a result, that's where the bulk of cuts were. So the governor presented one budget. And then just like if you get diagnosed with a catastrophic illness, you seek a second opinion, the legislature operated as that second opinion, that second set of eyes to ensure that Nevadans were represented at every step of the process and that we took a fine-tooth comb to the budget. So we spent this about 9-8 days, I don't know, time is fluid. We spent the entirety of the special session digging through and figuring out if there were any ways that we could find additional dollars. And thanks to that work, we were able to save programs like adult dental Medicaid coverage, which is an optional service under Medicaid and was originally set to be cut. We did not finish with a budget that is where we started from. Cuts are painful no matter what, but we were able to save a number of essential services and thus concluded special session number 1. We finished with a balanced budget for fiscal year 2021, and we'll now have to make some continued tough choices as we head into the 2021 legislative session. Because while we're seeing sales tax, gaming tax, all sorts of different tax dollars spike up from the zero they were at during the shutdown, we are still nowhere near where we were in terms of our projections.
Well, and part of the challenge that we had was we just got through the last recession, right? And in a lot of industries, they never staffed back up. Even though we were going through this great economic cycle, we were still very lean. So unfortunately, as this came crashing down, we couldn't get any leaner in a lot of situations. So I'm glad you explained that. Thank you so much.
And the same lean functioning that private sector entities had to do during the recession are no different than what the state had to do. And state operations were just getting back to full capacity. And last session, we were finally able to add dollars into really needed programs like mental health services, behavioral health services. We're able to grow our public education buckets of services and grow out Medicaid services to put dollars into things like financial literacy programs. And we now have to go back and scale back again. So it is painful whether you are in public or private sector operations. During our second special session, we addressed a number of policy issues. And one thing that I did not know previously that's important to note is that we cannot address issues outside of what the governor puts into a special session proclamation. So the governor lays out what the legislature is to discuss in the special session, and we are bound to those parameters. In the second special session, we put forward a number of constitutional amendments that deal with mining taxes in the state. They are proposals that are meant to increase the amount of tax dollars that mining pays. One of the proposals has mining pay a dividend to people, and another proposal has the constitutional cap on mining taxes changed. Another proposal has an increase in the deduction that a change in the tax deductions that mining is able to make. All of those could potentially end up on the ballot and will likely be addressed, will certainly be addressed again in the next legislative session. Those were very controversial measures that had a lot of debate. And personally, I am of the opinion that while we should certainly look at mining and it's an important and worthwhile discussion, that we can dream bigger and be more thoughtful about what our tax base looks like. We secondly made changes to the election law so that every active voter in Nevada will be mailed a ballot in an attempt to ensure that no one has to choose between their fundamental right to vote and their health. We also made changes to the evictions process by allowing for courts to stand up an eviction mediation process so that landlords and tenants have a non-judicial forum to sorry, someone just knocked on my door and scared me. Sorry. And that landlords and tenants have the opportunity to meet in a non-judicial forum and discuss why a tenant is on the verge of eviction. I'm sorry, excuse me, my dog is just going nuts. Apologies. Louis, sorry, this is working from home. And we also put forward a package of police reforms to create ways where police departments are perhaps putting into place best practices related to how they interact with different communities and to ensure that there are, that we remove things like chokeholds from what tools police officers have at their disposal. And Assemblyman Roberts is much better equipped than I am to talk through the details of what that looks like in practice. And we also put forward past legislation. I know I'm forgetting something. Sorry. I'm gonna pause there because I've drawn a bit of a blank as a result of my distraction. Assemblyman Roberts, what am I missing off of the second special session?
Well, thank you. Hopefully my dogs don't start barking either. You did a great job of doing an overview for the legislature. I think there were several other things too, is DETR, the unemployment issues that we've had. You know, obviously we had a huge volume of people filing unemployment claims. You know, we've never had the volume like that in the history of the state. And that office had a huge issue with handling the volume and the workload. So we did pass legislation to allow them some flexibility on the rules to allow them to process claims quicker and also adapt to federal regulations that come down with the CARES Act funding that allows them to do that. Hopefully that will allow them to pay some claims. I mean, it's really been a huge issue for all of us, and in the fraud that is going on with that as well. Hopefully, and well, not hopefully, I know that we are paying claims and getting some additional work done from this legislation passing. We also passed some business liability bill that due to COVID, we thought, or we know that a lot of businesses need some kind of liability protection to get back into business for fear of litigation, and so we did pass a bill, Senate Bill 4, I believe it was, that provided some liability for all businesses. Now, in the casino industry, it also provided some codified in statutes, some cleanliness standards and some work standards that were put into the statute for that industry. Unfortunately, we did not see eye to eye on the healthcare workers. There was some belief that the emergency orders covered those, and in schools were carved out as well. But all in all, it provided some basic liability protections to allow businesses like all of you to get back into business without fear of liability or over litigation. The police reform, I'll just talk a little bit, about that. There was two separate bills on that, and as the senator pointed out, Assembly Bill 3 originated in our House, and it codified a lot of things that are in best practice in this state that basically fulfills trust in the police. Show cold was one of them. It's one of those things that you find a variety of different organizations doing different things, but we took it to a level that was best practices in the country. We addressed some issues with filming in public, a variety of collecting data, law enforcement data. So we were able to get some law enforcement agencies. Not everybody was on the same page, but we got that bill to a place where it really is codifying some best practices and some things that we already do in this state. The other bill that originated from the Senate dealt with the Police Officer Bill of Rights. It dialed back some things that were passed last session. Obviously, everybody was in agreement on that, but that was definitely a piece of reform. And then back to the original first special session, I think Senator did a great job of talking about where we were and what we did and the dollars that we found. And there's no dig on anybody. There was a significant amount of money that has been brought into the state because of CARES Act. And I believe that it's almost $19 billion that the federal government has infused into our state in a variety of different forms. And some of those are in the state coffers. And so it took us a while to figure out how we could leverage some of that money to shore up the budget. And we're still working on that in some interim committees moving forward. There may be some more funds that come forward, but they were painful cuts, as Senator Cancela pointed out. Nothing's easy about those. We did cut significant to higher education and K through 12, but we cut some programs that we weren't able to. We were able to save the per pupil expenditure, and with what we're going through now with distance learning and everything else, we were actually able to continue to provide some funds to enable distance learning to help with connecting students. As right now, at one time, there was almost 80,000 students that have just dropped off the rolls. They're slowly working and reducing that number, and that's due to connectivity. With that, I'll pass it back to the moderator. I think we pretty much covered everything, and she did a good job of giving the history.
Perfect, yeah, and that's one of the things. I like how you explain the citizenry representation, because a lot of states don't have that. And, I think sometimes as citizens, we always wonder, is their whole life spent in a Senate or in a House of Representatives, and do they ever go out and see anybody besides when they campaign? So that's where, when I first moved to Nevada, my first question was, why don't they make it every year? And then afterwards, I kind of said, well, maybe this every other year part-time thing can work out if we can still get engaging people like the two of you involved in representation. And we know that all of us that work in this field, we understand that it's not just working a full-time job, but even though you're only paid to work 120 days, that it is a full-time job, because right now you're not in session and here you are still volunteering. So we appreciate that. A couple of things that I want to kind of ask, and this is just kind of general information. Typically in education, transportation is one of the largest budget items. We know that by us going virtually right now, we're probably saving millions of dollars in gas, resources to transport kids back and forth. It seems like many of the schools have gotten the internet up so the kids can actually have the learning process in place. And it seems like most of the teaching programs that I've been seeing with my kids especially are still happening, and they're positive experiences. But what exactly happens with all of that money that was designated for transportation? Can we, I know some of it's used this budget for certain items, but can we kind of forward that to next semester or next year? How does that work?
I can start here, and it's a good question, Dave. And it is true that we are not spending on things that we traditionally spend in during a school year, because schools are not operating the way they typically do during a school year. The number one budget item for our education system, for our public education system, is personnel. That's hands down where the vast majority of dollars go. Everything else is an important but not super significant expense. So while we are saving on transportation dollars, we are seeing increased costs in other places. So for example, standing up school meal distribution centers, making sure that personnel that would typically be doing things like driving kids is being repurposed to doing work that allows distance learning to happen. So there are some savings, but they are not going, even if they are spilled over into the next school year, they are not going to dramatically enhance or change our education budget. They may make the need for cuts smaller in some areas, but it won't be enough of a savings to dramatically offset the lack of income because of the change in our economy.
And I'll add that she's exactly right. Personnel, in government is your biggest expense. And we cut 160 million out of K through 12 education, right? And so the transportation cost is really a fraction of that deficit. And so, it will realize some savings, but it won't be enough to make up a huge deficit that we've already put out there. And then, another expense is we just loaded some money to do COVID testing. We're using CARES Act money to test teachers and employees so that we can try to open our schools back up. Now if that money runs out in December, or at least the contract does, unless there's some other monies that will be available to carry that through, we may have to come out of our hide, to continue that program so that we can get our schools back open. So that's all figured into it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, is getting the schools back open, obviously, because there's a lot of not only just social programs that are involved with the schools, but some kids just aren't set up for distance learning. They're just not going to do well. And then we have the whole testing issue, and it's just too bad we can't put our entire city in a bubble like the NBA, where they've been wildly successful at keeping, the certain levels of kind of cleanliness and responsibility, and here we have to protect the students from taking this home to the vulnerable populations as well as the teachers, so that they can continue to teach all of the kids. So yeah, we look forward to seeing kind of what different out of the box thinking happens, because obviously I think we're all thinking a little bit different than we used to. The next question I have for you is, knowing where we are with the budget, that we need to obviously make up money, you know, BOMA being the Building Owners and Managers Association, we manage and own buildings. The perception is that everybody that owns a building is rich. It's not quite true. Although there are some very big REITs out there that are very wealthy, a lot of building owners really are not as positioned, you know, to kind of absorb some of these issues that they've got with, one, if property taxes were to increase to kind of disrupt the business model. I want to kind of talk about that first. And then two, the uncertainty of what's going to happen with evictions. You know, I know that everybody's kind of like holding their own right now, and some tenants are paying, some are delaying, some are not paying. But, you know, what's going to happen to the building owner with possible property tax reviews, and then any eviction process that might be being discussed. Tom, you want to start first on this one?
Yeah, I'll start. You know, so Senator Cancela talked a little bit about a bill that was passed during the second special session regarding evictions. And what that did is that set into place a mediation process. I'm sure all of you have looked at that. And what it does is it extends the eviction process for 30 days, right? But it limits it at 30 days. The way it was presented to us is that the amount of evictions that could be coming once the moratorium is lifted, it will overwhelm the court system. And so this allows for the use of mediation and access. There's a considerable amount of CARES Act funding that can help with back pay of rent, and it will facilitate getting access to that money quicker so that some business owners, you know, can actually recover rather than just go straight to eviction and maybe recover some of those losses. I mean, that's why I supported the bill. You know, I'm not a fan of pushing the can down the road on the eviction process. You know, that moratorium, that was a decision by the governor. I believe that the premise behind it was to give this mediation program time to get stood up, allow the courts to do that, what we put into place. And so hopefully we'll get back to business and we'll start restoring everybody, renters and rentees.
Yeah, so I will just be very candid in saying I fundamentally believe our landlord-tenant laws undoubtedly favor landlords over tenants, and that we have work to do to create a better equilibrium so that tenants have a bit more of a say and a bit more rights in the eviction process and generally. And there are folks here who may disagree with me, and I'd be happy to have any and all one-on-one discussions. I think it's really important to be learning from each other. But as a result of that imbalance, there is work to be done to ensure that there's more clarity in the evictions process. We have one of the fastest eviction process in the country. And last session, we were able to make some gains to make changes and give tenants a bit more time to be able to stay in their homes and to change things like the late fees that tenants pay on rent. Sorry, my dog is having a day. And what I'm hopeful for is that dialogue between landlords and those who represent them, whether it's realtors, the apartment association, different manufactured home associations, there are lots of folks interested in this dialogue, and they all have pretty significant representation. They have associations like BOMA. They have the ability to come together and have dialogue. The same does not exist for tenants. Really, outside of legal aid, there aren't a lot of groups bringing tenants together. So I've spent quite a bit of time meeting with folks in weekly rentals, meeting with folks who are tenants in rental homes, and talking to landlords who own a single home, talking to landlords who own multiple properties that they rent out, and trying to really get a feel for how this all plays out on the ground. And I'd like to continue doing that work because, there's no question that we can keep doing better, and that we are likely going to face another dip in housing as the recession continues.
Yeah, and one of the things, because there's very few multifamily or HOA managers within BOMA, which it's kind of interesting because they're two distinct situations, obviously. A couple of the members in BOMA do also have kind of affiliates that work with them that do residential properties. But I think when, what we're looking at evictions is mostly with the commercial side, where, it seems like in our industry, there's a few different examples. There's the small businesses or businesses that are like, hey, we're going to do everything that we can to pay. We've taken advantage of these grants. We're going to continue. Mom and pops don't want to let their business go because this is their livelihood. And then we have other, larger businesses that they started asking for reductions, delayed payment right from the beginning because that's what their attorneys told them that they could do. And then you've got other people that are just like, hey, I'm not going to pay, and that's the interesting dynamic. Being a business owner for 30 years, I've never once thought I don't have to pay my rent, pay my employees, pay my bills. And that's some of the concerns that are out there right now is, it's fine that we've got to pause, and we need to pause in these times to make sure that everybody can look around and see, is my business viable? Can I make it viable? Can I thrive in the future? But at some point, we need to make sure that we can get the mechanisms in place. Because I'm already starting to hear from certain aspects of the retail environment that as a restaurant is closing, a new restaurant is getting a new opportunity, and they have a different business model that focuses on carry out and to go. So it's kind of sad, but as businesses close, new opportunities arrive. So those are the eviction that we're looking at. And I agree with you. We need more multifamily in the state. We need more lower income in the state because we have a very, very large service industry that needs housing, and they've been struggling, so hopefully we can kind of accomplish that and figure it out. Any discussion about property taxes out there on what might happen with property taxes coming up in the next session? I know they're going after mining a little bit, which that's back and forth because you need 3 sessions to approve it. So the 2 special sessions along with another session is going to accomplish that. But in the real estate industry, it seems like the impression is we're just the rich guys. We don't need any help from anybody. We're going to continue to get filthy rich. Have they discussed property taxes and any programs that might increase that or affect that in any way, shape, or form?
I can start on this one, Assemblyman, if that's okay. So I don't know that there will be a specific proposal that results in any sort of changes to our property tax system. I'm hopeful that what will happen as a result of the different mining tax proposals that are out there is that our business community and really our entire state will come together and say, it is true that our tax system is not funding the needs of our state. How can we address this? Because we can continue to look at the pie that currently exists and make decisions every session between now and the time that we come out of this recession and decide, should we cut Medicaid or education? Should we cut from higher ed and increase tuition, and continue to shuffle the pieces of the pie that exist? Or we can fill in and have a full pie. I'm of the opinion that there is work to be done on our tax system. There was an initiative last session that would have changed the way depreciation happens on property taxes in our state. It did not move forward, but us and Nebraska are the only 2 states that do not reset depreciation values at the point of sale. I think that's an interesting discussion to have. And I think if all of the players who would be affected by that were at the table and putting forward their concerns, we could come up with changes that maybe don't leave anyone particularly happy, but don't leave anyone too pissed off. And perhaps that's a signal of a good deal. But it requires a willingness to come forward. And like anything else that requires problem solving, it starts with an acknowledgement that we have a problem. And until people are willing to say, we don't want to underfund education, we don't want to be at the bottom of every list that says we are between 45 and 50 in per pupil spending, that we don't want to have a waiting list for Medicaid patients who require a prosthetic leg that is almost 100 people deep. Like, all of those things require a public acknowledgement that we want things to be different. So whether or not there will be a specific proposal next session, I'm not sure. Do I think there should be? Yes. Would I like to see one? Yes. I've not put in a BDR to bring one forward because I'm not sure we've reached that point of community consensus that such a heavy lift would require.
Yeah, so I would imagine. So I was at Metro for several years, and we had property tax that came directly to us, and I can tell you that local governments need a stable platform for that. Sorry about my phone. So although I'm not a big proponent of changing the property tax structure, I believe that there'll be some initiative that will be brought forward. And with that, to the senator's point, if you can get everybody in the room and talk about a common sense way to address it, I'm willing to talk about it. But yeah, the challenge that we have is if in the recession that we had in the last one is that because of property tax caps, values go down so far and it takes so long for it to catch back up. I would be okay with a floor. Is you could we can only go up 2.5. Well, I'm fine with going down 2.5, right? So that you do have some kind of stable tax base for local governments and state.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that's been one of those issues. I've seen those BDRs before where it was, hey, let's just do a reset, because a lot of the people that are taking advantage of this opportunity, they're not the people that we were looking at saving originally. Originally, it was a lot of locals buying properties, selling them, and we didn't want somebody buying a property, the next thing you know, their property taxes double in a year. Well, at this point, I think that we've maybe matured a little bit more past that. But again, that's up to the you guys to kind of hammer that out. One question that I do have is came up in the chat box. Obviously, with us having this school situation, we've lost quite a few students. I think that's over 10,000 students. We don't know if they're coming back, if they just are absent right now. I mean, there's a lot of circumstances that could lead to this. That obviously is going to affect the dollars per pupil that we get from the federal government. Has there been any kind of discussion about freezing, maybe tuition levels at a certain number so that we can kind of reset and go forward as we continue to try to find out if these students are going to come back? Or is that something that we just have to take into consideration for the next budget cycle?
So I'm not on the education committee, and maybe the senator is or more familiar with it. But I can tell you that if you drop those folks off of the rolls, we allocate money. I believe it's either quarterly based on your student enrollment. So each school is allocated a certain amount of money. So that's why who knows if those kids are still here or not. That's why there's an extensive effort by the school district, to reach those students and get them connected, whether they've moved out of the state or they don't have the ability to do distance learning. So, I don't know what that impact is going to have. Like you said, with unemployment and everything else during the last recession, I was a captain at a couple of substations that had, huge apartment complexes in them. And some of those places were down to 30% occupancy, right? So I know people left, and who knows what will happen this time, whether that's already happened where people in the service industry, the casino industry are just leaving the state, because they think this is going to last too long. That remains to be seen. But we base the budget off of the student population, and that's how we figure the budget for next year.
Okay. I have a question. I was listening to a panel the other day, and they were talking about the home builders are in an amazing position right now, because with the home builders, they're selling everything they can possibly build, but yet we have record unemployment. And what they were commenting on is what they believe it is a lot of people. Well, you've got the people locally that now everybody's at home, right? So they need more space in their home, and with low interest rates, they're not as affected. They still have income. They can get a new home, a bigger home. And then you have a lot of out-of-state people coming now that everybody's working remote. So I guess you can, have a great Wi-Fi connection. You can still keep your office hours from your company, and you can come to Las Vegas and enjoy everything Las Vegas has and work remote in your other company. Has there been any reflection on how that is going to affect our economy?
I can start. I can tell you, talking into realtors and the home industry, is you're correct. There are an influx of people with COVID has given a lot of people the realizations like, well, I don't need to be in LA or San Francisco. I can sell my house here in LA and, and go to Vegas and buy 3 times the house for what I had there. And so I think that's what you're seeing here, is you're seeing an influx of people from high tax states that are coming here because they realize they can still earn a living remotely and have the benefits of a low tax environment, which is exactly why when we go to the next session or whatever, is in our effort to improve things, we can't ruin the things that attract people here. We already have a 1 or 2 industry tax base, and that would hurt us for diversification. That's why we need to be careful when we move forward. But there is some talk and some projections that this will flatten out at some point, and that the housing market could take a little dip. I've seen a few forecasts, but I know the builders had anticipated finishing out their projects this summer, and then they didn't anticipate any reduction in their business until the fall. But I don't know if they're pulling back now or not. If we continue to have sales, I would imagine they're still going to construct homes.
I would echo the Assemblyman's comments on this. I think it's interesting to me that we have not had a housing crash in the same way that we did early on in when the housing bubble crashed in our last recession. And I'm hopeful that sticks and that we continue to build and grow our valley, because I would like to see our housing base stay stable. But it feels increasingly difficult to predict what's going to happen in housing. And in the meantime, keeping people employed and ensuring that those jobs, whether they are the actual construction jobs, the developer, the front house, secretarial jobs of different companies, stay online. I hope that continues.
All right, so I have a question, and this is more of a forecast of what you see. You guys have very diverse backgrounds. You've been in Nevada for quite some time now. We've always had a lack of diversification. We've relied on the Strip in Southern Nevada. We've incentivized certain manufacturers to come in. They've talked about distribution at different times. What can we do as Nevada to bring in additional resources so that we don't rely, on 90% of our income coming from the Strip? Because obviously that's changed, and we always knew that we were fragile. This kind of is exemplifying the fragility. When people don't want to travel, they don't go to Vegas. So what are some ideas that you guys are kind of seeing that are maybe thought of, brought up, or crazy ideas that we'll never possibly do, but hey, we're in Las Vegas, we're in Nevada, dream big. Yvanna, you want to start?
Sure. It's a bit cyclical, because what we hear from entities, whether it's GOED or the LVGEA, these major entities that are tasked with this precise question of diversification, is that the number one, if not number 2 reason they hear from companies that we are trying to attract but won't relocate here is our education system. They repeatedly tell us as legislators how important our education system is to diversifying our economy. If we are to have a better education system, we need to diversify our economy, and we need to increase the amount of money and the way that we are enacting public education in the state. So the two really go hand in hand. And if we are to attract new businesses and new industries, we have a lot of the tools already at our disposal. We have an incredibly attractive tax base for business. We don't have a state income tax. We have one of the most consistent weather places in the country. Maybe hot a lot, but you know what you're getting. And we have geographical proximity to the world's 5th largest economy in California as our next door neighbor. We are very much positioned to be a leader in diversification. But until we get that question of whether or not our education system will serve kids that come here or are raised here or are born here as a result of companies relocating, we won't meet the potential we have to be a national and potentially global leader in business. And we should be living up to that potential. So for me, it starts with our education system and then continuing to use the tools at our disposal to attract companies to understand why Nevada is a good place to do business.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And just real quick, Tom, you know, one of the things that I've noticed, because, you know, I did have my kids in a private school, but they're both in the public high school system. And it seems to me that some of the principals at these schools are amazing, and they do an amazing job of communication and resources. And I often laugh because I know that what the statistics are, but as a parent with a child in a school with an amazing principal, I don't care about those statistics because my kids are in great positions to learn in a public system. So that's where I think that, you know, statistics sometimes are a little bit misleading, but yeah, you know, you're right. That's part of the issue. Tom?
Yeah, well, you know, I'll agree. Both of my sons were in the public school system here, and, you know, they got a great education. So I think sometimes it gets a bad rap. But I agree that that's something, whether it's, you know, perception is sometimes reality. And for those businesses that are relocating here, you know, every time we're on the bottom of those reports, that, you know, that's a challenge. But I think the other challenge, you know, and that, you know, the senator mentioned is, you know, we don't have a state income tax. We have a great business climate, you know, for taxes and things like that. Well, we got to make sure that we keep it that way, right? And because I can tell you, after the last legislative session, some people, you know, talking to groups, LVGA and folks like that are bringing groups here, is a few companies that were looking at Nevada said, well, I don't know, I think you guys might be moving in the wrong direction, and they're looking elsewhere. And so we have to find a balance, you know, between, all right, we can fix the things that, you know, that we need to work on, but we can't do it at the detriment of what attracts people here too.
Absolutely. And as this meeting, we've only got a couple more minutes. I know that recently the governor is kind of getting some input back on a climate strategy. It's also been said that we're one of the fastest growing or fastest warming cities in the country. We can, you know, see the devastating effects of the California wildfires next door. You know, we're a unique position because of the sun down in the south, the geothermal up in the north. Do you think that becoming a more energy efficient, water efficient, sustainable state would help any of that process out?
I mean, so if I may go first, yeah, I will agree there, right? We're positioned well, right? We haven't had rain in now 152 days. You know, it's sunny every day except for the California wildfire smoke, and so we really have an opportunity to capture and capitalize on clean energy. We got to make sure that we don't go too far, right? And so that we have some diversification in our energy grid system. But I agree, the environment's important to people. You know, whether you're a climate denier or a believer or whatever, we can't be ignorant to the fact that the amount of humans and the things that we do here impact the climate, right? I mean, you know, it does, right? And so we've got to make sure that moving forward, that we make changes and do things to protect our environment. And Nevada is a vast state with a lot of environment to protect. And so I think it's important that we do that, but we can capitalize on the good things that we have here. And I agree, we're looking at that, and I'm involved in a lot of that stuff.
And the climate question, the conservation question, is not disconnected from the diversification question. There's no, there is clear evidence that shows the more we invest in clean energy, the more we invest in clean energy jobs. To date, there are over 15,000 jobs tied to the clean energy sector in Nevada. And it's a result of an investment in solar, geothermal, and all of the different kinds of primary and ancillary businesses tied to a green economy. And Nevada is ripe with the potential to lead on solar in particular, but on climate initiatives in general, because from Las Vegas all the way to Lake Tahoe, we have so many different kinds of geographic and we have geographical and weather diversity within our state, and we have a lot of land to invest in things like solar panel farms, like the one just outside of Las Vegas. So it is important for us not only to be a leader for the preservation of our state, especially as it relates to water and water conservation, because as an aside, we have a deal with the Colorado River that allows us to get a certain amount of water. We have Lake Mead, and then we're really looking for water sources. So water conservation in particular is very important to our region. But the almost infinite potential to invest in green jobs, solar or otherwise, really could be at the heart of opening up our state to new economies.
Absolutely, and we can see that with Tesla with their big gigafactory and additional research and different companies that are coming in town. So I think we're getting up to that hour, and one of the things just to kind of leave you with is BOMA's been around forever, in the United States, and the main reason is to provide those BOMA standards for buildings. Part of those standards are working with local code officials, et cetera. I know that Clark County has recently completed an emissions inventory as well as a sustainability inventory, and they've hired a sustainability manager. Justin Jones is really pushing things down here to try to make sure that we start thinking of these things across the state. And with what's happening, it seems like we're all on the same page at this point. And I think the main thing that we appreciate is in Nevada, we're always going to have politics. We're always going to have people that maybe disagree in opinions and matters and such. But it seems like when we sit in a room and talk, we can get things done. And that's one of the important things that we really appreciate of having you guys show up today for this panel and having representatives show up on a yearly basis. Our goal is going to be to reach out to you in the spring before you get into session, or probably in January, I guess. And we definitely are going to try, if you guys are able to have visitors, we're going to come up and try to visit you guys up in Carson City, because we know it's very important. So as they get ready to kind of pull me out of the screen, so to speak, I just wanted to thank you so much, Senator Cancela, for coming to BOMA today as your first time and being involved with the process. Assemblyman Roberts, thank you so much for continuing to help BOMA and support BOMA and provide the information. We appreciate the job that you're doing, and hopefully we can kind of spread the word to get out the word to vote this year, because obviously we need to make sure that we are doing our jobs as citizens if you guys are doing your jobs as representatives. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Thank you so much. I definitely say it was a very dynamic discussion. So thank you, Senator Cancela, and thank you, Assemblyman Roberts and Dave, for being our moderator as always and sharing some very great questions here. So before we wrap up, I didn't see any additional Q&A questions in there in the queue. If anybody has anything that we didn't cover, you have 30 seconds to get that in there before we wrap up. So again, thank you for joining us today. I want to make sure that I plug for next month. We also have a very dynamic speaker coming on, and I know I have to do a drawing for one of our wonderful attendees today. But next month we will have Tina Quigley and John Riscrapo to give us a 2021, if you can believe it, forecast, economic forecast for us. So I think that's going to be a very, again, lively discussion for us. So when we go back to the real quick, I want to make sure that we can make sure we do a prize for one of our attendees today. Leslie Mujica, thank you. Congratulations. All right, Leslie, we'll make sure to get that over to you very quickly. Again, I appreciate everyone's time. I know we're probably a minute or so over right now, but thank you for joining us today for the discussion. Very informative information. Again, if you have any additional questions, I want to remind everyone that we do have the forum online with our BOMA Nevada website, so you can put information and questions in there, and we'll get back to you. Make sure to check out social media for posting. If you see something, say something, and we will, quick reminder, which I didn't do, you will be seeing not only the survey at the end of today's broadcast, but we will be sending a general survey to all members today, asking for your opinion on where we're going in the direction, if we're going to do some continued virtual events or an in-person event. So I want to make sure that if you're not on today, please tell your friends to make sure they click on that survey so we can get that information and get your feedback. We definitely listen to everything that you share with us and try to make sure that we are doing our best foot forward to make sure that it's very informative, engaging for you. And I do see Leslie said thank you, and she wants to meet in person. So I appreciate that, Leslie. Put that in the survey also. So with that, I'm going to say thank you and have a great afternoon, everyone. And I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.